I'm Glenn Perry. I'm the chair of the board this year for our organization, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. It's a great show of support for our organization and, more importantly, for our clients, the survivors of domestic violence. I'm not going to be long-winded up here. I want to get through what I have to say. First of all, I want to tell you that we, our organization, our staff, our volunteers, work tirelessly to help survivors of domestic violence. And if you are a staff member, volunteer, or board member of our organization, if you could stand briefly. Thank you. We have big plans. We have a lot of ambitious goals that we want to meet, but it's going to take money to do that. And now more than ever, we need the support of people in our community, our businesses, and our individuals. Government funding is being cut drastically, not only for us, but for all other non-governmental organizations, and we really need your support. You're going to hear some great speakers today about the services we provide and the impact it's made on their lives, so I'm not going to get into that. My plea to you is please support us. Without your support, we cannot provide the services, the advocacy, legal services to our clients that they desperately need. And we really appreciate everything you've done in the past. And I implore you, be generous as you can. No amount is too small. And you know, with your support, we can reach these ambitious goals we have and serve our clients even better than we have in the past. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fuchs, and I am the Manager for Business Development at the Greenville Convention Center, and I would like to welcome you today on behalf of Tom and Alice Glennon and Carolina Associates. That comprises Greenville Convention Center, the Hilton Greenville, the Hampton Greenville, and the Holiday Inn, and also the Hampton on Glenwood in Raleigh. So thank you so much today, and welcome to the 6th Annual Domestic Violence Impact Luncheon. We are so very proud to continue to be the grand presenting sponsor each year. It is a very important organization and mission that's near and dear to our heart, and we couldn't be more proud to partner with them. We truly believe in the great work that the center does each year and the services that they provide to over 4 different counties in eastern North Carolina. The center provides life-changing services to victims of domestic violence and their families, and we would like to ask you to join us today in giving generously to this mission so they can continue their services and impact our community for the better. Thank you so very much today. I hope you enjoy your lunch.
Good morning, everybody. Great. I'm Richard Alsberg. I'm one of the board members. I like to talk a lot, so I'm kind of pinching myself. Okay, it's time to sit down. So welcome. I echo our first 2 speakers, Glenn, and thank you for hosting us here at the Convention Center today. I'm here to remind you about the auction. Now, technology's come a long way, and I try to keep up, and generally my kids help me keep up with that. If you have your cell phone and turn your camera on, you can scan this barcode here, and you'll have all the information you need for the auction. So the auction is in progress, and it will last only through lunch. So at the end of lunch, all the bidding will stop. So I highly encourage you, if you walk through and saw something that you like, please get in on the bidding. Again, it will stop at the end of lunch. Laura Coleman has been fantastic putting the auction together, and she says, please tell people about item number 68. It's a canvas of fingerprints of children that have been served by the Center for Family Violence Prevention, and these are all child witnesses to domestic violence. So just so many nice pieces, so many folks to thank for your contributions. Again, thank you for coming today, and I hope you enjoy your lunch.
My name's Reverend Andrew Shue, and I'm the senior minister of First Christian Church, and I also, like Richard, serve on the board here. And we're grateful for all of you that can be in attendance this day. And Richard, last year it was interesting. Julia really pushed the bourbon before I came up, and I still think that that was one of those great moments where, but anyway, I want to take some time this morning to bless our meal. And we also would like to just take the time to recognize that there's diversity in this room. And so we recognize that not everyone prays to the same God, but we ask that you join me this morning and that we recognize that all of our diversity is so beautiful, and we ask God to bless each and every one of us. May we pray. Most precious and holy God, we recognize that there are many different names that individuals in this room may call you. And so we recognize that we need to make space for that. And we do. And we pause and we reflect. But we thank you because we recognize you as a wonderful and nurturing God who provides. You have created a world so beautiful that provides to our every need. You have placed us here as stewards to care for this earth, to care for our sister and our brother. And we thank you. We ask that you would continue to task each of us with a ministry. We recognize that the Center for Family Violence Prevention, that it has an important ministry to care for those who are in need. And we thank you for all the stories, the wonderful stories of the survivors and the power that those stories share. We thank you that we can come together this day and that we can share in a meal. We ask that you would bless this meal, that it may nourish our bodies, so that each of us could continue to listen to the call in our lives, because you have called each of us to make a difference in this world. We ask that we would discern what are our talents, what can we do to give back. And we thank you for everyone in this room for their support of this important institution, and we ask that you would continue to bless it. Bless this meal, bless these people, and bless all of the ministries that we participate in. We ask all these things in your holy and precious name. And all God's people said, amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Pilot. I'm on the board of directors for this wonderful organization. And thank you all for being here. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. As Glenn mentioned earlier, without you, we would not be here. We have such a huge need in our communities. And note that I said communities. It should be noted that we not only serve Greenville and Pitt County, we serve Martin and Washington counties as well. To our grand presenting sponsors, Carolina Hospitality and Tom and Alice Glennon, thank you. Grady White Boats, Purple and Gold Rentals, and LF Consulting are platinum sponsors. Our gold sponsors, Dr. Deanna Boyette, Domtar Greenville, and Greenville Kids Dental. Our silver sponsors, Fanning Family Foundation and Van Fine Art Portraits. Our diamond sponsors, Jefferson Group, Farrier and Sons, KDL Construction, Graham Knuckles and Connor Law, Bill and Karen Koch, Doctors Herb and Lynn Garrison, Evans Street Properties, Physicians East and Greenville OBGYN, Chesson Real Estate Group and Liz Freeman, Kinetic Physical Therapy, Beauty Bar Medi Spa, Lighting by Design, iGo Creative, and at your service, our purple sponsors, Advanced Moving and Storage, Aaron's Logging, Bostic Sugg, Seth Edwards, our Martin and Washington County DA, Linda Adele Goodine, Leslie Parker Thompson, Aqua Venture, Bargain Boutique, Coastal Fog, Stretch Zone, Go Eco, J. Morgan Designs, Polly Pylan State Farm Insurance, Eastern Dermatology, Ann Grimes, North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, and Time for Science, First Citizens, Open Door Ministries, Sheriff Paula Dance in the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, Pitt County District Attorney Ferris Dixon, and Harvey Wooten. Again, we would not be here without you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. I'd also like to send a special thank you to the management team with Carolina Hospitality. You have been nothing short of amazing, very easy and wonderful to work with, and we appreciate you very much. Thank you to Castillo Language Services, who has provided an ASL interpreter for us today. And I also want to take another minute. I know Glenn already mentioned our staff, but I would like to mention them again. We have a fantastic staff. Each of them is very committed to what we do. They are the backbone of our organization. They carry their jobs with them all the time. I can't imagine you could do something like this and not, and I know that many of you in the law enforcement community out here do as well. So thank you for that. You will see an increase in visibility in our communities. Again, not just Pitt County, but Martin and Washington as well. We are in a period of growth with this organization, and we need your help now more than ever. I hope you've been able to familiarize yourself with some of the many services we offer. We served 1,448 clients last year, and I also want to mention that we have copies of our annual report available on our information table for you to review. And I would also ask that you please review the information at your tables. It will let you know a little bit more about what we do and who we serve. I have served on many boards. I moved around a lot for work advancement and ended up in Greenville. And I have to say that this board that I currently have the privilege of working with is fantastic. Each and every person is committed to advancing our cause, and I am very grateful to be here. We do have this luncheon for different reasons. One is certainly to raise funds. You've heard that from people before, you'll hear it from me, and you'll hear it once again before we end. And as you familiarize yourself with how many people are in need and what we do, you'll understand why. Another reason is to educate the community. Several years ago, I and my children became survivors of domestic abuse. And what I can tell you is that it is a woefully misunderstood problem, plaguing not just our community, everywhere. And we need to do what we can to make people understand exactly what it involves. We have several events we hope you'll join us at. Please watch your email. We're going to keep you informed. And Wednesday, October 25th at 6:30, we have our annual domestic violence vigil at the courthouse, open to the public. Saturday, November 11th, Cypress Glen has a holiday marketplace. It's at Cypress Glen, it's open to the public, and we will have a presence there as well. And I am honored to announce and very excited on behalf of the Board of Directors that effective immediately, the Center for Family Violence Prevention will be taking over the Festival of Trees here at the Greenville Convention Center. And you will be hearing from us. The Family Support Network, unfortunately, of Eastern North Carolina is dissolving. And we've been working with them. Debbie Iams, our president, has been incredibly helpful to offer her time and guidance. And we will have it up in about 7 weeks. We don't want a year to go by. The community waits for it. They've been doing it for many years. And I think it's a service to the community, but it's also another way for us to involve sponsors and volunteers. So we do have sponsorships available. If you as an individual or your organization or community would like to sponsor trees, that is available. Just let us know. Again, we will send out a constant contact reminder. You can also come see me toward the end of the day today. And if you sign up by October 15th for a tree for your business or in honor or memory of someone, we will give you a discount for this year. So do think of us and remember us if you are looking for a place to give your time and effort and energy to. Follow us, we know where we're going, and please reach out and join us, look for us. Thank you again for being here.
Hello, everyone. I've been asked to make a quick announcement. Our online auction is still active, will remain so until 12:15. So if you are actively bidding, please continue, and good luck. We'll shut it down at 12:15, and then if you receive notice on your phone that you have won an item, you can collect it out in the hallway at the end of the program. So, thank you. Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that is far more complicated than most people understand. It's not a couple or a family members getting into an argument and somebody gets really angry and hits someone else. That's not even the beginning. Domestic violence is a situation where one person tries to gain and maintain total control over another individual. There's all sorts of ways that that's done. It can be done with financial control and manipulation. It can be done using emotional, psychological control, constantly sending negative messages, confusing messages, and manipulating behavior. It can be done with sexual control and manipulation and abuse. Frequently, a domestic violence victim will be isolated from all friends and family who could provide support group for that person if only they knew what was going on. Domestic violence victims are stalked. They're followed. They can't go anywhere, anytime, without somebody monitoring their behavior. They can't move freely in the community. They are stalked digitally. Cyber stalking is a very new form of domestic violence that's come up in the last few years as our technology has advanced. Victims are threatened with violence. And if that manipulation doesn't work, they are manipulated with actual acts of violence. The ultimate control, the ultimate threat is homicide. Domestic abuse functions at so many levels, so simply and basic daily manipulation to ultimate control. Last year, Samantha mentioned our agency provided services to 1,448 victim survivors in Pitt, Martin, and Washington counties. Can you imagine what that looks like all across the state or all across the country? It's a huge number of people that are affected by this problem. When a client comes to us for the first time, the first thing they do so that we can determine their needs and how we can help is to tell us their story. Sometimes they disclose to us for the very first time ever, and it's like the floodgates have opened. Our staff listens to these stories and tries to determine how we can best help this person. We educate them with what their options are and help them realize that they do have options that they probably never even considered or realized before. These stories are heartbreaking. We've prepared for you today a few short clips. These are real stories. These things really happened. Listen carefully. Thank you.
Today, the receptionist called saying, "Your husband is on the phone again. This is like the 20th time. Geez, he's needy." When I picked up, he asked me what I was doing and said that he was checking to make sure I was okay. When I told him to stop calling because my boss was getting irritated by the calls, my husband got mad and hung up on me. I just know he's going to yell at me when I get home.
I had no idea he had the past that he did. No one ever told me. His mom, his sisters, his aunts, his grandma. No one ever told me that he hurt his ex-wife like he did. No one ever told me he served time in prison for hurting his ex-wife and all the other women he's hurt. I wish I'd known. Maybe it would have saved me from the same pain those other women felt.
I thought I was safe. I thought I could go to work, a friend's house, or a family member's birthday party. I didn't ever think he would show up. The coincidences of seeing him drive by turned more concerning until I confirmed he had devised a way to trace my movements. The feeling of safety turned into a feeling of being targeted, as if I was now the hunted. I felt as though I had nowhere to go without him knowing. I had absolutely no safety or privacy. I was terrified.
My husband came home late one night and didn't like what I made for dinner. He became very, very angry. Then he quietly walked to the stove, picked up the pot, and dumped everything on the floor. He made me get on my hands and knees and told me to eat it like the dog that I was. He pushed my face into the food. I couldn't stop crying. It was so humiliating. And my kids saw everything.
I was about 5 months pregnant. My husband became very angry. I don't know why. Most times, I didn't know why. The next thing I knew, I was pushed to the floor and was being kicked in the ribs. Repeatedly kicked. Terrified for my baby, I curled into a tight fetal position to protect him until the kicking finally stopped. The next day, I got a dozen beautiful red roses and a love note.
3 days. 3 long, excruciating days. Bound to a chair and not being allowed to get up. Every hour, he pulled a clump of hair from my head. Even though my hair grew back, I still cringe at the thought of my bleeding, painful, scalping punishment over 3 days. Just because there were no vacuum marks on my rug to show I vacuumed. Just because I didn't have dinner ready when he got home from work. Just because.
Those are really powerful videos, and I hope it touched you. But I want to take a moment to let you know Laura King, who had been our executive director since 2018, this year decided it was time to retire, although she's still working with us. And I wanted to take a moment to show our appreciation for her. She's been working with our organization as a board member, chair of the board, running the retail stores, and then as executive director for the past 30 years. Her fingerprints are all over this organization, and I want to show her how much we appreciate her. And she has a bit of a green thumb, so the board wanted to give her a gift certificate to Plant and See so she can follow that passion also. Thank you, Laura.
This is a surprise. I didn't know this. Anybody who knows me knows that this has meant a lot to me over the years. I share freely that I am a domestic violence survivor. My experience was in the early 1970s when there were absolutely no domestic violence services available. Getting out of a situation like that, when law enforcement doesn't understand, when the judiciary doesn't understand, when you go to a counselor and they don't get it, talk to your pastor, and they don't understand. They want you committed to your marriage. That was a struggle that no one should have to go through. And when my children were growing up and I realized they weren't going to need me every day anymore, I made the commitment that I would serve my community so that no domestic violence victim would ever have to face that by themselves. That's my mission. And I am so proud of the work in this community that's been done for this cause. And the people in our organization, I know their passion. They do this from their heart. They do it well, and they are to be commended. Working with them has been one of the greatest privileges of my life, and I'm certainly stepping back, but I'm not going away. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate the support today, and thank you for this recognition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Portia Willis. As a former Center for Family Violence Prevention staff member, a former board member, and a fellow survivor of intimate partner violence, it is my honor to introduce a phenomenal community advocate who has dedicated her life to raising awareness about abuse and empowering survivors. Miss Deborah J. Shepard, a native of Snow Hill, North Carolina, is a survivor of domestic violence and a child sexual assault survivor. She, as so many others, has shown remarkable resilience in the face of adversity, using her own experiences to fuel efforts to help others. Her career as a speaker and an advocate for victims of trauma spans over 10 years. Deborah is the founder and executive director of Heartoscope Incorporated. Heartoscope offers free art programming services that fosters healing, education, creativity, and entrepreneurship to underserved communities. Deborah understands that art is a tool that's used as a component of recovery from traumatic stress and to assert a sense of hope. As an author, Deborah is known for authoring Good Secrets and Bad Secrets, a children's book that educates children on the importance of speaking out when in harmful situations. In 2021, Deborah wrote and directed I Wish I Knew, an award-winning film and public service announcement that focuses on the hidden traumas of students while calling for more trauma-informed schools. Deborah is currently pursuing her master's degree in child and development psychology and was recently appointed to the Juvenile Justice Planning Committee by Governor Roy Cooper. She also works as a victims advocate with the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, helping individuals navigate the legal process while providing them with the services they need on their journey from being a survivor to being a victim to a survivor. Now that you've heard about Deborah professionally, allow me to introduce you to her heart, to the woman who not only created a life for herself, but for her 11-year-old son, while still keeping in mind our community. The woman who's given the time, given in her spare time, is found painting, writing, spending time with those that she loves, and brainstorming the next community collaboration. She's here today to share an inspiring perspective of what's possible when we embrace a mindset of growth and creativity. As a result of her not giving up on her dreams, our community has been changed for the better. There are young children whose lives have been changed and unleashed because someone believed in them. There have been artists whose creativity has blossomed because someone gave them the permission to be unapologetically themselves. And there are women who have become stronger and braver because of her story. When a close friend was asked, "What do you hope listeners will learn from hearing Deborah speak?" she replied, "My prayer is that you get to see and know the Deborah that God created, the one who's making change for us all." Please welcome Miss Deborah Shepherd.
Good afternoon. I specifically requested not to make me cry before I got on. I might need some tissue just for backup. Yes, I am Deborah Shepherd. I don't cringe, but I kind of feel a ways when people say all these great things about me. Because I don't ever want someone to think that I'm like this superwoman, right? So just know that even though you heard all those great things, I'm still human. I'm still flawed. I'm still learning every day to be a better person. Before I even share my heart today, I do want to thank the Center for Family Violence Prevention and Laura King for having me this afternoon to share my heart. Could you give them a hand? And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Table 17, the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Paula Dance, Chief Guard, Sergeant LaChauncey Staten, who is my supervisor, and then she's really gonna get me for this, y'all. Sharon, can you stand up, please, so they can see you? She is the advocate that works alongside me. I dare say Sharon is probably the longest. How long have you been the advocate in Pitt County? 14 years. I am a survivor of domestic violence, but I've had the pleasure of serving as an advocate with the Pitt County Sheriff's Office for the last 3 years. And I will say that I have learned so much. People praise me about the good work that I do, but honestly, if it had not been for Sharon, I don't think I would be as effective in my role as I am. She's taught me so much. And she's amazing, and I believe that advocates don't always get the acknowledgement they deserve. Not that we go into this profession because we want it, but because, like today, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is just once a month. So once October is over, most people put their purple attire back in the closet, but for people like us, we see this every single day. And it takes a lot out of us. We can be the strongest people in the world, but seeing domestic violence and how it impacts the victim, their family, their friends, is something that you never forget. And so for many people, after October, they'll go on to other things. We are still living domestic violence every single day. So I just want to acknowledge Sharon, and also I don't know if Caitlin's in here, or Maria, who are the advocates with the Center for Family Violence Prevention, and then Miss Ashley Turner, who is the advocate for Greenville PD. She's not here today, but I just named, Sharon, Caitlin, Maria, Ashley, and me, 5 advocates that serve all of Pitt County I don't know if y'all understand how big of a deal that is. 5 advocates for all of Pitt County. Ashley is the advocate for Greenville PD. Caitlin and Maria assist with Greenville as well in other areas. And then me and Sharon are assigned to everything outside of the city limits. Bethel, Farmville, Winterville, Ada, Grifton, everything. Blackjack, Simpson, Fountain, you name it. And we are swamped because those numbers of domestic violence are so great that I don't even have time to even explain. And it's honestly a sacrifice to be here for 2 hours, knowing that when we get back to the office, we'll probably have about 20 or so missed phone calls from people who need services. So I just want you to keep that in mind. But I did want to acknowledge the crew over there, and it's an honor to serve with the agency that takes domestic violence very seriously. So please just give them a hand. So in preparation for today, I had so many people who reached out to me, and they were like, oh my God, we're so excited to hear your story. And I was like, I don't think you're gonna hear my story today. I don't wanna disappoint anyone. I will share a few things, but today, my heart is to be a voice for those who will never have an opportunity to stand before people and share their story. Here's the thing. It's never been my desire to be the poster child for domestic violence. When I experienced domestic violence, I was a student at ECU. I was in a 3-year abusive relationship. Tons of control, tons of manipulation, and tons of violence, as every victim's story. Being told what I could wear, who I could hang out with, how I could wear my hair, what parties I were allowed to go to, all of that. If I didn't respond to a text message at an appropriate time, I would be accused of cheating. Same thing if I didn't answer the phone. Sometimes I would be in class and I cannot respond to your text. Getting punched if I would forget to order the pizza thin crust. If I ordered it regular crust, I would get hit. If I did not crease his shirt the exact way he wanted it to be before a frat meeting, I would get punched. If I didn't do what he told me to do, I would have a loaded 9mm gun pointed to my head. And that happened more than once. It took me 3 years to decide that I was better than this. But here's the thing. I lived it, I survived it. Obviously, I've been able to make a good life for myself. But the thing is, that's not every victim's story. And a lot of times, when I first started to share my story, a lot of my friends or colleagues or people I knew would say, I have someone that I want you to talk to. They are in a domestic violence situation, and I say to them, oh, you need to meet my friend Deb, because if she can make it out of a situation, so can you. In the beginning, because I was young and didn't know any better, I thought that was like so awesome. I'm like, yeah, let me talk to them, and because if I could do it, they can do it too. But now, as an advocate, and I meet so many different victims every day, I've learned that that is so far from the truth. Just because it was easy for me to make it out does not mean it's easy for everyone else. Our abusers might be the same. Our abusers might have the same characteristics, but every victim has their own story. They have their own set of resources. They have their own support system, even if they do have a support system. For me, I didn't need my abuser. I struggled with low self-esteem. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted someone to love me. But I didn't need him. I wasn't financially tied to him. I worked. I had my own place. I was in school. I was pretty sharp, so I knew how to navigate life. I didn't know how to navigate relationships, obviously, but I knew how to navigate life. I didn't need to come up with an escape plan. I didn't need to go talk with my neighbors and say, if I flash my light 3 times, this means call the police. I didn't need to do that. He didn't take care of me at all. So in many ways, it was easier for me to leave. Doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Doesn't mean I wasn't afraid. It just meant that my abuser may not have had so much of a stronghold on me as most victims' abusers do. So it's going to be difficult for me to tell a woman who has been with her abuser for 10 plus years, she doesn't work. He's the breadwinner. They have 3 kids together. She doesn't have a car. She doesn't have the proper education. What do I look like telling this woman, you just gotta believe in yourself. You just gotta love yourself. She will look at me as if I don't have any sense at all, as she should. Because for me, I didn't have children with my abuser. I had a job. I quit school, but I knew if I wanted to go back, I could. I knew how to navigate certain systems. But the many women that I see every day, along with the other advocates, that's not their story. But what a lot of them are met with are family members and friends who judge them harshly, who call them stupid because they don't have the strength to leave, who call them worthless, or even say, well, it must not be that bad because you stay. They hear that a lot from people who probably don't mean to really offend them, but they're hearing it from people who truly don't understand what domestic violence is. And not only that, when someone has been abused, we're asking them to speak out. We're asking them to make a report. We're asking them to press charges and take out a protection order as if it's just so easy, right? So I work in the system, right? And I consider myself pretty sharp. And the system is still pretty complicated for me to navigate. So think about a person who has absolutely no knowledge about the system. They don't know who to call. They can't just pick up the phone and text someone who knows someone that can get it done. They might not even have a phone. Sometimes I believe as a community, we are not understanding enough of what victims actually endure. Not because we're bad people, but because we just don't understand. And one of the things that I've learned in this life is that when we don't understand something, we typically judge it. We don't take the time to actually do the research or just have a conversation with someone, not to respond, but to actually listen to what they are experiencing. So by a show of hands, I'm just curious. Not anyone who works in law enforcement or works in the system, does anyone in here even know the process that it takes for a victim to take out a protection order? One person raised their hand? Wow. So if only one person in here knows, and I consider everyone in here to be probably very educated, well-versed people. If one person in this group says that they know the process, think about victims who don't have the education, don't have the access, don't have the resources. If most of us in here don't even know that process or understand it, how will we expect a victim to understand it? It's very difficult. A lot of times we see victims who come to us and they are still in crisis mode. They call us and they're in crisis mode. They can't articulate properly what they're going through. And we have to literally sit there and help them dissect it, right? But oftentimes what happens is they will call law enforcement. Law enforcement will come out to the house. And law enforcement, they need them to be able to explain to them what's going on so they know what to do. Here's what happens oftentimes. The victim is hysterical because they're traumatized. Something just happened to them. The abuser is typically very calm. They know exactly what to say. So when an officer reports, it's almost like they can't talk to the victim because the victim can't get out what they're trying to say. They're hysterical. You're trying to get them to calm down, and it's impossible to do that. But then you have the abuser who's just standing there like, can I talk to you? They're calm. Naturally, you gravitate to the calm person. And then what happens is the victim may internalize that as law enforcement doesn't care about me. They're taking the time out to talk to the person who just bashed my head in. Do you see how that would make a victim be fearful of reporting something just over a misunderstanding? Because here's the thing, abusers aren't just abusers for the first time. They've been doing this for a long time. They know the system. They probably know the system better than half of our victims. They know exactly what that phone call is going to consist of. They know exactly what's going to happen when law enforcement gets there. They know exactly the questions they're going to ask. They already know. It is extremely difficult for a victim to get here, where I'm standing. It's extremely difficult. For a protection order, they have to be able to write out a narrative, right? Explain what happened, when it happened, how it made them feel, what their fears are. So imagine if a victim doesn't have a proper educational background and they're spelling everything wrong, or their handwriting is sloppy, and everything is jumbled together, and you can hardly read what they're saying. What can we do with that? Or when they go before a judge who they probably feel extremely intimidated by, because I know I did when I was a victim, but now as an advocate, I'm like, oh, they're just like me, they just have a robe on. But they don't know that. And they're trembling, and they can't articulate what they're trying to convey to the judge. And if they don't say the right thing, they don't get their order. You know how terrifying that is? You want someone to understand how afraid you are, but you don't have the proper tools to convey that message, right? Or let's say they press charges and someone is arrested, right? Does anyone who is not in law enforcement know what pretrial release conditions are? Okay? A few people. When someone is arrested for assault, they have pretrial release conditions. It can state, don't have contact with the victim, don't call them, don't go to their house, don't go to their job. You can't drink, you can't have a firearm. But guess what happens? You have victims who press charges in the moment because they know it's the right thing to do. But then a few days later, they want to drop the charges, or they don't want to follow through with the process. And then a lot of times people get frustrated. You're dumb for doing that. I don't understand why you would do that. This is crazy. You're just wasting people's time, right? But what they don't see is that as soon as that person gets locked up, they don't care nothing about those pretrial release conditions, and they're calling the victim, threatening them, crying, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, I was drunk, begging them to drop the charges, or they're getting their mom to call, or their auntie or grandma, to try to guilt trip the victim into dropping the charges. You're gonna take him away from his child. Why would you do that? He's not gonna be able to go to work if he's locked up, and who's gonna pay your bills? Or, here's the fun one. When they get arrested for assaulting someone, and it causes a lot of damage to that victim, and their bond is only like $50,000 or $100,000. you know a good bail bondsman, you have a relationship with them, you can get out in a few hours. You can get out before the end of the day. But if someone is arrested for a drug charge, $1 million bond, they're not going to get out for a while. But if I can almost take someone's life, I can get out because my bond is so low. Where's the value in human life? But we want our victims to actually trust that we have their best interest at heart. I don't want y'all to look at me and see someone who survived and see how well I'm doing and think that this is the average victim's story, because it's not. It's not. We've had so many domestic violence homicides this past year, murder-suicides. You have families that have so many questions that they don't have answers to, because you can't get answers from dead people. So they have to assume that something was going on. Well, I can't believe this person would do that because they were so nice. Most people are nice in public. But I tell people this all the time, especially people who are in relationships. You know your partner better than anybody else. I don't care how great they are in public. Abusers aren't walking around with a shirt on that says, hey, I'm an abuser. They're typically people in all types of professions. Teachers, they work in the medical field, they work in law enforcement, they could be attorneys, they could be pastors, they could be anyone. They could be amongst us today in this room. Victims can be anyone. They can be your teachers, they can be your doctors, they could be your hairstylists, they could be sitting next to you in this room, because 1 in 4 doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 except for the people who are here in this room. That's not true. You never know who's sitting beside you. You never know what they're dealing with. And you never know what keeps a victim in an abusive situation. For some women, I'll get punched in the face as long as that means my kids have lights, as long as it means my kids can eat, as long as it means my kids have a roof over their head. They'll be the martyr because they have yet to come face to face with a society, I'm not going to say community, I'm going to say a society that truly understands all the complexities that comes with domestic violence. And I only have a few minutes with you today to share. But that's why today like this is important, because you get a little glimpse of what domestic violence looks like and what it means for victims. But it also gives you the opportunity to talk with people who are here, people who are in law enforcement, people who work with victims every day. You have your advocates here to ask real questions. Find out what these organizations need. Yeah, they need money, but they need more than money too. They really need community members that understand what is happening here. Because I could give a victim all the encouragement they need, make them feel like a superwoman and say, I'm going to do this, right? And then go home and get on the phone with their friends or family members who make them feel less than awesome. Then a few minutes they had with me might not mean a thing. Victims need continued support. I say coming to us to get an order or pressing charges is just like going to the emergency room and getting treated. But they still need long-term care. You can't put a bandage on a wound that needs surgery. So we cannot expect for victims of domestic violence to just come, meet with us, get what they need, and then just send them on their way and think that they've had everything they need. because that's not true. We have repeat victims all the time, sometimes with the same abuser and sometimes with a different person. You know what that means? It means that in that moment they got the services they needed, but that long-term care was not there. They didn't get the therapy they needed. They didn't go to school to get a degree to become more independent. They didn't get the job they needed. They weren't able to get a car or find somewhere else to stay. There are so many factors that go into why a victim does not leave. It takes more than a center. We appreciate the center in everything they do, but they need us to help them as well. It takes more than law enforcement. It takes more than advocates. It takes more than churches. It takes people who are willing to say, yeah, I know you might not have the educational background that we think you might need, but we think you're teachable, so yeah, you can come work here. We know that you might not have the history when it comes to maybe owning a house or renting a place, but you can come stay here so you can get out of that situation. Sometimes we have to make ourselves uncomfortable to help people out of an uncomfortable situation. Do y'all understand when I say that? We all get to leave here and go on about our way. Most of us know where our kids are. We know they're safe. We know we're going to go home to a partner who treats us with respect. But that's not the case for many people who we run into. And I don't mean people that we see here. I'm talking about when you're in the car at the stoplight, that the person next to you could be going home and getting abused. Or that person could be going home and might not wake up the next morning. And a lot of times we say, oh, I'm going to mind my business. Whatever is happening to my neighbor is not my business. Well, it will become your business if your child gets hit by a stray bullet because there was a DV situation going on. Don't let people tell you that it's not your business, because it is your business. I don't care if it's your friend. I don't care if it's your coworker. I don't care if it's your pastor. I don't care if it's your mother. I don't care. It is always your business. We have to always care. And we have to always understand that victims of domestic violence, what they're feeling, what they're thinking is so complex, and we cannot figure it out for them in one day. But we have to be patient with them. We can't become frustrated. We can be frustrated about a situation, but not be frustrated at the victim. Understand that today they might have been ready to press charges, but tomorrow they're not. See it all the time. It takes time for them. The average victim, it takes them 7 times to leave before they actually leave for good, if they even leave. Some don't leave. And it's not because they're weak. It's not because they're dumb. It's not because they're in that relationship because they just want attention, because that's a lot of the things that they hear. It's because they feel as though their situation is so intense and so complicated that there is no other way to survive it unless they stay in it. For me, surviving was leaving. For a lot of victims, surviving is staying. And we might not get that, but guess what? We're not supposed to. We're not in their shoes. But we have to figure out as a community, how do we come together and support organizations that are helping victims, supporting law enforcement who are trying their hardest to make sure that we get abusers out of these homes and where they need to be, behind jail or somewhere getting mental help. We can't do it alone. Being here today is a start, but it doesn't end here. It does not end here. And so I hope that today, even after you give your donations, that you still figure out a way, as the man said earlier, find out what your talents are. You might be awesome at writing grants. You might be awesome at getting people together. So find out how we can get community members together to do more events on awareness. You might have a bunch of clothes in your closet that you don't use. You have victims who can't go to job interviews because they don't have the right attire. donate the clothes. You do hair, help them get their hair done. Do their makeup so they can feel empowered, so they can feel confident. You know how to do resumes? Help victims get resumes done. Help coach them to prep for interviews. Help them be empowered, because leaving is just one part of surviving. If they leave and then enter a world where there's no help, they're going to go back. Find out what your superpower is so that you can empower more people, so that Deborah J. Shepherd is not the only survivor that people will look up to. Because please don't look up to me. Please don't. I'm learning every day that healing is a lifetime journey. I'm going to be living with the effects of domestic violence and even the child abuse that I experienced for the rest of my life. It doesn't go away because I get dolled up and I articulate and I make you laugh and make you feel warm. No, I'm still dealing with the effects every single day. And I know that if I'm dealing with it with all the resources that I have, the victims who don't have the resources, they're dealing with it on a way that is far more intense than the way I deal with it. So if you learn anything today, just know this: domestic violence is not one-dimensional. It's not something that we're gonna figure out how to problem solve for it today. It's not. But you have to be patient with victims. You have to. You cannot judge them. You have to be patient with them. And you have to find out how you can support your community and help fight domestic violence. It's going to take more than events like this. It's going to take sacrifices. It's going to take checking your friend that you know is not treating their partner a certain way and letting them know, we're not going to stand for that. It takes donating your time, your money, your clothes, your talents. It's going to take a lot that goes beyond today, but I hope that I was able to be a voice for those victims who may not ever have the opportunity to stand in front of a bunch of beautiful people such as yourself. But just because they're not here standing and sharing their story, I hope that we will leave here today keeping them in mind and keeping them in our hearts. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Deborah, for your words, and I would say profound words, for putting a face to domestic violence and sharing from perspectives that you have, both as a victim and as an advocate. I just want to restate some statistics that have been stated today and perhaps some new ones that you're hearing. Deborah shared 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States have experienced domestic violence. 35.2% of women, 30.3% of men have experienced DV or stalking or both in their lifetime. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are abused. If you equate that to 1 year, it is 10 million men and women. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are victims of severe physical violence. I want to take you on an imagination or imaginary journey with me for just one moment. If everyone in this room would close your eyes, and I'm going to ask you to imagine this situation. You're at home. You are retiring for the night. You have children in the other room. You hear abrupt noises downstairs, rustling, throwing of items. You hear noises that make you cringe and realize there's an intruder in your house. You know your children are in their rooms, hopefully sound asleep, and you're laying there trying to decide, how are you going to get your children to safety? You're laying there thinking, oh my God, I have no idea where this person is in my home. You're scared. Your heart is beating 1,000 miles a minute. Your hands are sweating. You may or may not have the means in your room to protect yourself. Your mind is racing, trying to decide what is it that you're going to do. You may be crying. If you're me, you would be sobbing. Trying to figure out, what am I going to do to get to safety? What am I going to do to get my children to safety? How am I going to get out of this situation? Open your eyes. Look around the room. You're in a safe place. It was only an imaginary vision I just walked you through. Your heart is not beating fast. You're calm. You're thankful that you've had a nice lunch and that this has been a nice luncheon. What I described to you is the very emotional journey that a victim of any violence, but especially domestic violence, feels every single day that they are in that relationship or in that violent, abusive journey. Some of us who are survivors, Deborah said it very well, we are still in a healing journey. There are certain things, even though it's been more than 20 years, almost actually a little over 30, for me, that still trigger me back into feeling the racing heartbeat. Some movies I can't watch in episodes because it's still a trigger. That's the lasting effect that Deborah has just talked about. Today, I am making a plea. I'm the Director of Resource Development and Planning for the Center for Family Violence Prevention. I've been with them for 5 years. And in the 5 years, we have worked very hard to generate grant dollars into our organization to support the many services and programs that we provide to children all the way to elderly. The money is growing thin at the state and federal government level. We received a 55% cut in federal funding and state funding this year. What that means is we have to go to our local level. And we may not be able to fill the full gaping hole that this has created in our organization, but I believe in this community. I believe in all of you as partners. I believe that as we come together and we work together, we can make a difference and we can support the delivery of these critically needed services to survivors who have a history of domestic violence, are actively involved in domestic violence situations, or those that are on their healing journey moving toward self-sufficiency. On the table is an envelope and a donation card. I would like to ask and plea that you consider writing a donation, putting it on the donation card. You can write a check, or you can do the QR code that's on your table. Any amount, believe me, is multiplied and makes a difference. When you get done with the donation card, you put it in the envelope, seal the envelope. There's a big envelope, I believe, at every table. If one person can collect those donation cards, our treasurer will be at one of these doors and collect the cards as you leave, at the envelopes as you leave. We appreciate so much your attendance here today. We appreciate your support through the auction. I know all the winners. I mean, not personally, but I've seen the names. And I'm just so excited for all of you. Wonderful products out there. I just wish you a great day and a safe journey. Thank you.